I heard the ornament hit the floor before my dad yelled the words that split my whole world apart. It was Christmas dinner. The lights were warm, the roasted ham smell filled the house, and my mom was still humming some old Sinatra song in the kitchen. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. But inside that house, the truth was about to rip through me like cold air in an empty room. My dad pointed his fork at me right there, in front of my sister and my aunt, and said, "Emily, this can't go on anymore. Pay rent, or get out." Just like that. No warning. No kindness. No softness for the holiday. He looked at me like I wasn't his daughter, like I was some guest who'd overstayed her welcome. What stunned me wasn't the words themselves. It was the timing. It was the way he said it. It was how everyone else just kept eating. And I remember thinking, this can't be real. This can't be happening at the table where he used to cut my food into tiny stars when I was 5. If you've ever been blindsided by the people you love the most, you're going to understand my next steps more than you think. And if this story hits home already, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how many of us have sat through a holiday that should have been warm, but turned into a wound. But that night, I didn't say a word. Not yet. Because I knew that if I opened my mouth, I might break more than just the silence. And the worst part? This wasn't the first time my dad treated me like I was disposable. But it was going to be the last. Before you think I overstayed or freeloaded, let me tell you the part people love to leave out when they judge women my age for living at home. I had moved back to Atlanta after losing my job in marketing at a small startup. It wasn't dramatic, just layoffs, corporate reshuffling, the usual empty promises that it wasn't personal. Rent prices had shot up, and my savings were bleeding fast. So when my mom said, "Come home for a bit, honey. We'll figure it out," I believed her. I wasn't sitting around all day. I was waitressing. Doing part-time freelance design. Applying for dozens of jobs a week. Helping at home, cooking, cleaning, driving my mom to her appointments. But my dad didn't see effort. He saw inconvenience. He saw a 27-year-old daughter who wasn't contributing money to a house he himself often refused to maintain. He had this mindset. If you're under his roof, you must pay. But the only people he enforced that rule on were, well, me. Not my sister. Not her husband. Not her 2 kids. Oh, they got the master bedroom when they visited. I got the attic. So when he said, "Pay rent or get out," I knew he meant, I need someone to blame. And you're the easiest target. What I didn't know was just how far he'd go to make an example out of me. Growing up, my dad adored my older sister, Rachel. She was the straight-A student, the track star, the responsible one. And I was, well, the creative kid. The emotional kid. The messy one. Rachel got her first car at 16. I got her old textbooks. She got cheering crowds at her games. I got told to stop being dramatic. Dad loved order and predictability. Rachel gave him that. I gave him anxiety, apparently. But Mom always protected me. She'd pull me close and whisper, "You feel things deeply. That's a gift, Emily." I clung to that. Still, as adults, Rachel got the annual support, gifts, checks, help with her mortgage, babysitting, you name it. I got advice. Mostly unasked for. But even then, I never expected my dad to humiliate me in front of her. That's the thing about family. You can forgive favoritism when it's quiet. You can't forgive it when it becomes a public spectacle. And Christmas night? It wasn't just a line. It was a performance. A performance for Rachel. A performance for everyone. And that realization stung so much I had to step outside and breathe in the cold air just to stay upright. But my dad wasn't finished. And the next thing he did? That's when I knew I had to walk out for good. When I stepped back inside, Mom was at the sink, her eyes red. She mouthed, "I'm sorry," but Dad didn't even look up. He took out a white envelope and slid it across the table toward me like I was a tenant. "This is the estimate of what you owe for the past 3 months," he said. I blinked. What? I never agreed to. It's only fair, he cut me off. Rachel glanced inside the envelope first, because of course she did. Then she passed it to me with this tiny, smug shrug. Inside was a printed breakdown. Utilities. Groceries. Wear and tear. Laundry. Family contributions. Total, $2,460. I felt my throat close. I whispered, "Dad. I've been cooking, cleaning, helping with everything." He raised his voice, sharp enough to slice the air. "You want to be treated like an adult? Then act like one." And then, quiet, cold, he added the line that humiliated me deeper than anything else that night. Rachel would never do this. It was soft, but it hit harder than the yelling. I sat there staring at the numbers. My hands were shaking. Mom tried to say something, but Dad snapped at her too. "Stay out of it." That was the moment the ornament fell from the tree behind us. It shattered like the last bit of hope I had that this was salvageable. And over the tiny splintering sound, my dad repeated the words, slow, deliberate. "Pay rent, or get out." I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't loud. I wasn't angry, yet. I just stood up. And I said, "Okay." He smirked like he won some long-awaited battle. But he didn't know the truth yet. He didn't know what leaving would cost him. Because my parents depended on me more than they ever admitted. And when I walked out that door, I took all of that support with me. And he wouldn't realize it until it was far too late. I packed my suitcase that night. Quick. Quiet. Cold. Mom knocked softly and tried to hand me cash. I hugged her and told her I'd be okay. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, like she'd been deflated by the man she married. Dad didn't come upstairs. Didn't ask. Didn't care. Rachel whispered in the hallway, thinking I couldn't hear. "She'll come crawling back. She always does." I didn't answer. But that sentence? It lit something in me. I left the house at 2 a.m. The cold stung my cheeks, but it felt cleaner than the air inside. I slept in my car that night in the parking lot of a 24-hour grocery store, wrapped in my coat, my suitcase jammed against the door. And I remember thinking, how did my own father become a stranger? But by morning, I had a plan. A real plan. And it started with figuring out what he gained from me living there. My parents weren't wealthy. Dad made decent money at his job with the county, but Mom's health issues meant medical bills always piled up. I didn't pay rent, sure, but I contributed in other ways: food runs, gas for the family car, house repairs, my mom's medication pickups. I had been covering more than I realized. And then the second truth hit me. My name was on several auto-pay accounts. House internet. Me. Streaming services my dad used daily. Me. The family shared phone plan. Also me. Random Amazon subscriptions. Yup, me. I had signed up for most of these when I moved back because it was easier at the time. And Dad? He never once offered to pay for any of them. But that wasn't the real betrayal. The real betrayal was this. My dad refinanced the house last year and added me as a co-borrower. Without telling me. He used my credit score to get a better rate. That's illegal without consent, and I could have shredded him for it legally. But I didn't want court. I wanted clarity. Boundaries. Accountability. And revenge, the quiet, administrative kind. I pulled my credit report. There it was, my name. My social. My dad's signature. I sat there in my car, my heart shaking. This wasn't about rent. This was about control. And in that moment, something in me snapped clean in half. The turning point, I decided to stop pleading. I whispered out loud to myself. I'm done begging for respect. And just like that, the revenge plan wrote itself. If you ever want to know how much a household depends on you, stop supporting it. One by one, I opened my banking app. I went through my subscriptions. My auto-pay bills. Every expense with their address tied to it. And I began shutting everything off. Not out of anger. Out of necessity. Out of self-respect. Because I finally understood something. You can't be the foundation for people who don't even see you as part of the home. I started with the phone plan. I switched it to a single line, just me. Then the internet. Cancelled. The streaming services. Cancelled. The cloud storage my dad used for his work documents. Cancelled. Even the home security app that I had been paying for since last winter? Cancelled. By noon, my dad had no Wi-Fi, no connection, no streaming, no cloud backups. Nothing. And he still didn't know. Not yet. And here's the funny part. None of this was illegal. None of it was revenge in the dramatic sense. It was just me, removing myself. But removing myself turned out to be the one thing he was never prepared for. At this point in the story, if you're still with me, make sure you're subscribed. I tell these stories because someone out there always feels alone until they hear one that sounds like their own. But my dad? He was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life. While Dad was losing services he never paid for, I found a month-to-month rental. Tiny studio. Old carpet. Smelled like coffee and dust. But it was mine. And the first night I slept there, I cried, not out of sadness, but out of relief. I got 2 part-time jobs. Freelanced at night. And slowly, the pieces of my life lined up. I wasn't thriving yet. But I wasn't drowning under someone else's judgment anymore. Meanwhile, my mom kept texting me updates, small ones. She didn't want Dad to know she was talking to me. Day 2. He says the Wi-Fi is broken. Day 3. He thinks the phone company made a mistake. Day 4. Your sister says he should have kicked you out sooner. That one hurt. But it also fueled me. I didn't respond to any of them, not yet. Silence was part of the plan. Because I knew something Rachel didn't. Dad wasn't financially stable enough to lose what I contributed. And soon, everything would collapse. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I was on break at my waitress job, still in my apron, holding a cup of warm water because I couldn't afford coffee that day. The screen showed Dad. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. On the fourth try, I picked up. He didn't say hello. He barked. Did you mess with the accounts? I kept my voice steady. No, Dad. I just removed myself from what I was paying for. He exploded. You can't just cancel the phone plan. Why not? Because I need it for work. Then you can set up your own account. Like an adult. Silence. Then a sputtering, choking sound of outrage. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that, by anyone, least of all the daughter he'd always seen as the soft one. He ended the call by shouting something about irresponsibility and ingratitude, but the truth was simple. For the first time in his life, he was feeling the weight of standing alone. And he hated it. But he wasn't done. Oh no. He tried one last thing, one desperate, ugly thing, to pull me back under his thumb. And that's where everything truly blew up. 2 days later, Dad and Rachel showed up at my studio. They didn't knock at first. They pounded. I opened the door because my neighbor was getting irritated. Rachel looked furious, like she'd practiced her expression in the car. Dad stepped inside without being invited, scanning my little space like it offended him. This is where you live now, he sneered. I didn't answer. He held up a stack of printed papers, my signed co-borrower documents for the house. You think you're funny? Canceling everything? Well, guess what? Your name is on my mortgage? You can't just walk away. I felt the floor tilt for a second. Yes, I knew my name was on the documents. But I hadn't realized he would weaponize it like this. Rachel crossed her arms. You're legally tied to the house, Emily. Dad can sue you for the canceled services. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. But because they truly thought I was that uninformed. I took the papers from his hand and flipped through them slowly. Then I said, quiet and even. This signature isn't mine. Dad froze. Rachel's eyes widened. I continued, I never signed these. This is, copied. Traced. Whatever you did, it wasn't with my consent. Dad tried to interrupt, but I kept going. And you know what's crazy? I checked. The refinancing was approved because the bank never asked to verify my ID. Dad's face went pale. You forged my signature, I said. The room went silent. And you used my credit. Rachel whispered, Dad, tell me she's wrong. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because he knew the truth. And then, he made the mistake that sealed his fate. He said, You're my daughter. I can sign for you. I felt something shift in my chest, like a door locking forever. I breathed out, slow and steady. No. You can't. And you're going to fix this. They didn't know I had already called the bank. The day before they showed up at my studio, I had already called the mortgage company. I had already submitted a fraud inquiry. I had already sent proof, my ID, my signatures, my employment records. And I had already been assigned a case manager who reacted with a very long, very telling silence when he saw the documents. So when Dad tried to yell, I held up my hand. I've already reported it. His voice cracked. You reported me? No. I reported fraud. Whoever committed it will deal with the consequences. Rachel stepped back like she'd been slapped. Dad started shaking his head. You wouldn't do that. You're not that kind of person. I wasn't, I said softly. But you turned me into someone who has to protect herself. He tried to guilt-trip me. He tried to shame me. He tried to twist my emotions like he always had. But none of it worked. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, the mortgage was frozen. Then reversed. Then reassigned to his name alone. His rate shot up. His monthly payment doubled. His credit took a hit so big he called me 6 times in a row one morning. I didn't answer. Because this wasn't revenge. It was restoration. And for the first time in years, my life wasn't tangled in his control. 2 months later, my mom asked me to come by. Alone. She said she just wanted to talk. When I stepped into the living room, the house looked smaller. Dimmer. Like the energy was gone. Dad was sitting on the couch, shoulders slumped. He looked older. Tired. Not defeated, just human. He didn't look at me. Mom said she knew everything. Every detail. And then she said, "Emily, your dad wants to apologize." I almost laughed. But then Dad lifted his head, and for the first time in my adult life, I saw shame in his eyes. Not anger. Not frustration. Not superiority. Shame. He cleared his throat. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that on Christmas. And I shouldn't have done what I did with the mortgage. I thought. I don't know what I thought. I was wrong. I waited. Silence stretched. Then he added. You didn't deserve that. My chest tightened. It wasn't enough. It would never undo the harm. But it was something. And what I said next surprised even me. I forgive you, but I'm not coming back. His eyes glistened, but he nodded. Because he finally understood. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. My studio became a home. I got a full-time marketing job again, this time at a better company. I repainted the walls. Bought thrifted furniture. Made friends. Stopped waking up with dread in my chest. Mom visits sometimes. Dad called once on my birthday, soft, hesitant, but I wasn't ready to talk. Maybe one day. Maybe not. Rachel? We haven't spoken since the studio confrontation. And honestly, I'm okay with that. The peace I found was worth every dollar I scraped for those early months. And the lesson stuck. You don't owe people access to you just because they share your last name. But here's the part no one tells you. Healing feels like grief at first. Even when you're letting go of the people who hurt you, sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't destruction. It's distance. It's clarity. It's forcing someone to stand on their own 2 feet because you finally stepped away. My dad didn't lose me because I left. He lost me because he pushed me away and expected me to stay anyway. And if you're watching this thinking, this sounds like my family, let me tell you the truth no one ever told me. You're not selfish for wanting respect. You're not dramatic for demanding boundaries. And you're not cruel for walking away. You're human. And you deserve a life that doesn't hurt to live. If this story hit you somewhere deep, tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you're subscribed. Your support helps more than you know. Thank you for listening. I hope you choose peace, even if it means choosing yourself.